So you're new to Genshin, you've been doing some 10 pulls on the current banner, and you get 5-star Lyney. Now what do you get with Lyney besides Fontaine's greatest magician? Well, Lyney is a bow-wielding pyro user who does a lot of damage through his charge shot stacking mechanism kind of thing that goes through his skill. So in this video, we are going to look at the basics of Lyney, his skill, his burst, his normal attacks, his charged attacks, which are very important, and also some artifacts and some weapons. So what we are going to do first, we're going to look at the current build of the current Lyney that we are using in this current video. One could be a look at a later build, which this Lyney definitely is. Two, if Lyney's hitting higher numbers than yours, then it could just be the artifacts, could be the weapon, things like that. So let's get into it. This Lyney is a level 80 out of 80 with almost 2300 attack, 16,000 HP, and 35 EM. Crit split 66.8 over 180.6 with 146 energy recharge and a pyro goblet. His weapon, the first great magic, which is his signature at level 90. And for artifacts, he is running a 4-piece Marshmallow Hunter. He is C0. His talents are 8, 8, 7. So real quick, speaking of talents, we are going to look at his two passives. His first one, if Lyney consumes HP when firing off a prop arrow, which we'll talk about what a prop arrow is, the Grin Malkin, which we'll talk about what the Grin Malkin is, summoned by the arrow, will, upon hitting an opponent, restore 3 energy to Lyney and increase damage dealt by 80% of his attack. So getting a little bit of energy, increasing damage by 80% of his attack. The second passive, the damage Lyney deals to opponents afflicted by Pyro, will receive the following buffs. Increases damage dealt by 60%. Each Pyro party member other than Lyney will cause the damage dealt to be increased by an additional 20%. Lyney can deal up to 100% increased damage to opponents afflicted by Pyro by this way. Now, what this means, you want 3 Pyro members in your team to get the full effect of this buff. If you have 2, then you will have an 80% increase. With just Lyney being the only Pyro, you will get a 60% increase. With all 3, you will get 100%. So this limits Lyney a little bit if you want the full ability of this passive to a mono Pyro team, which Lyney does do very well in a mono Pyro team. So it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it does limit some team options. So now we are going to look at his normal attacks and his charge attacks. His normal attacks are going to do physical damage. They do have a really cool animation with the cards going on, but his real thing comes with charged attacks. He has 2 versions of his charge attack. If you do a charge attack for a normal amount, then it's going to do a normal charge attack for a Pyro user where it's going to do Pyro damage to the enemy, is going to imbue Pyro into the charged arrow. If you charge it for a little bit longer, which you'll see with this slightly different animation of the cat kind of coming around the charge arrow, then it will fire off a increased damage. It'll fire off a prop arrow, and it will put the cat, the bobbin, but I can't even remember the name of it anymore. The cat in the hat, right? So we have this cat in the hat, right? Now, this is going to attract enemies to it whenever it's been on the field for so long. It will explode, dealing Pyro damage to nearby enemies. Something else that you're going to notice is that you have this little number beside Lyney in the magic hat. That is a stacking mechanism that Lyney has. You get the stacks mainly by firing off the prop arrows. To fire off the prop arrow, you have to have over 60% HP on Lyney. You will lose a certain amount of HP firing it, dealing damage, making the cat in the hat, doing a prop arrow, gaining a stack. So it's very important to run a healer with Lyney so that way you can get his HP above that 60% threshold. So that way whenever you do the charged shot, you are going to get the prop arrow. You have to have the above 60% HP for the prop arrow to put the cat on the field because of his passive and to get the stacking mechanism. If you have below 60% HP, it will still do the prop arrow, but you will not gain the stacking effect. It will not put the cat on the field. That is very important to remember. You need to run him with a healer. You need to keep his HP above 60%, which all of that fluctuation also triggers the Marshmallow Hunter set that we were looking at the very beginning. Lyney's charge attacks also have a chance of doing the Pneuma, that is this extra white light coming down whenever he hits an enemy. Now, the reason that this stacking mechanism is important is because it goes directly with his skill. The higher stacks that you have, the more damage his skill will do. His skill will clear the stacks, dealing pyro damage in an AoE, doing a ton of damage, especially with the stacks on them. You can get a ton of damage through his skills. That's what I meant by at the very beginning whenever I said that his damage comes through his charge attack and his skill, is because you are getting the stacks with his charge attacks to then get the max damage on his skill. Also with his skill, whenever you use it, it will heal Lyney back up. So you are losing HP, getting the stacks for the cat in the hat for the skill. When you use the skill, you will heal back up. But in order to get all 5 stacks on the skill, you need to run a different healer with Lyney, because the most you can get without healing Lyney, I believe, is 3. 1 from his burst, 2 from charge attacks, and then to get the final 2, you have to heal Lyney back up above 60% HP, do 2 charge attacks to get to 5. I believe that's how you have to do it. His burst, he is going to turn into this different cat in a hat. It's a different prop. It's not the same cat. It's not the same hat. It is a different prop. It says so in his flavor text on his talents. What this is going to do is that it's going to let you kind of travel around, hitting an enemy one time, each enemy one time, for an instance of pyro damage. At the end of it, Lyney will pop out, dealing another instance of pyro damage in an AoE. So again, you can hit each enemy one time, for pyro damage in this manner, and then afterwards, he will pop out, dealing an AoE pyro damage. It also gives him a stack, and it summons the cat in the hat from his skill. So it does a lot. Remember, the cat in the hat from the skill also does a little bit of grouping thing. It taunts enemies. So now we are going to look at an artifact set, specifically one for early game, one that kind of shows how his mechanics work, or that work well with his mechanics. And that is going to be a 4-piece martial artist. Martial artist is going to increase your charge attack and your normal attack damage. Using her skill increases it even further. This is going to be very, very good for Lyney because you are going to be using his charge attacks a lot. Now you can, if you want, run like 2-piece martial artist, 2-piece gambler, so you're increasing the skill damage and his charge attack damage, but it's going to depend more on your other characters if you can reliably get his skill stacks all the way up to 5 every single time. Which one of these would be better? For main stats, attack percent, pyro goblet, and crit rate or crit damage, depending on what you need more of. Lyney is a very basic character to build whenever it comes to stats. For beginner weapons or early game weapons, we have a couple different options. So we're just going to skip right over his signature because we know that it's his best. And we're going to look at the craftable bow in Fontaine called the Song of Stillness. Now, this is going to get up attack percent, which Lyney's going to like. It's passive. After the wielder is healed, they will deal 16% more damage for 8 seconds. It can be triggered even when they're not on the field. So this is going to be really, really good because you can heal him up with another party member, or you can heal him up with his own skill. So this will allow you to get that passive very, very consistently. And because it is craftable, you can easily get this in Fontaine. So this is going to be a very solid option for Lyney if you don't have something like his signature. Next, we have Scion of the Blazing Sun. This is a battle pass weapon, so you can get it early if you pay for the battle pass. It's going to get up crit rate. Also, after a charge attack hits an opponent, a Sunfire arrow will descend upon the opponent and deal 60% attack as damage, and applying the Heartseer effect to the opponent damaged by said arrow for 10 seconds. Opponents affected by the Heartseer take 28 more charge attack damage from the wielder. So this is going to be very, very good for just increasing his charge attack damage. Also, it looks pretty good on him. Like, it's not perfect, but it looks pretty good. But it does get up crit rate, which is going to be very, very good for Lyney as well. Now, I'm not really going to talk about some 3-stars because you can get the Fontaine craftable weapon, which I highly, highly recommend doing for Lyney. Now we're going to talk about some teams. And this is going to be a great look at a team for Lyney. We have Lyney, Dia, Kazuha, and Bennett. Now, as I'm sure you saw during the video, as long as I didn't cut too many of them out, trying to explain his normal attack, his skill, and his burst, Lyney got interrupted a lot, which is one of his biggest downfalls, is that he needs to do his charge attack, and he gets interrupted very, very easily. Dia can help mitigate that. Dia's skill, if you're inside of its field, does pyro damage, which is great, as well as increasing interruption to resistance, passing some of the damage off to Dia as well, meaning that you don't have to watch his HP as much, right? You're hurting yourself with the charge shots. Having Dia take some of the damage is going to be very, very good. Then of course we have Kazuha grouping enemies together for whenever you use his skill, also giving you VD Shred and a damage buff. And then we have Benny, another pyro character, 3 pyro characters getting the full of Lyney's passive to get his damage up. But Bennett also can heal and give an attack buff. Lyney is going to fully enjoy everything about this team. He can make full use of this team very well. This is a mono pyro team, which like I said earlier is very good for Lyney. And you can see within this new domain, having Dia help out, having Bennett help out, and Kazuha help out, Lyney is doing a lot of damage. 106k is crazy for how often and how reliably you'll be able to do that to enemies in this team like this. Now, if you do not have a character like Dia, then you can use Xiangling and keep that mono pyro. You're still not gonna get Dia's unique thing of having the interruption to resistance. But I always say that resistance to interruption. You're not going to have Dia's unique thing about her skill that gives you resistance to interruption, but you will still be able to have the 3 pyros and run a mono pyro team. You just need to dodge a little bit more because Lyney will be getting interrupted if you don't. If you do not have Kazuha, you can get Jean, you can use Sucrose, you can use a lot of different characters. If you are going to be using Jean, then you can take out Benny if you don't have somebody like Benny, and just throw like Amber in there, so that way you can still get the 3 pyro characters in there, right? You could even run a Chevy overload team with Lyney, like C6 Fischl, even Fischl lower than C6, Benny and Chevy, which you're gonna have double healing. Chevy's gonna give you the shred and an attack buff. Benny is also gonna be giving you an attack buff, and Fischl is going to also appreciate everything that comes with that. Just as Lyney will, your overall damage will probably be going up a fair good amount doing something like this. Again though, you don't have the interruption to resistance to interruption. You don't have the resistance to interruption like you did with Dia, so you just gotta be much more careful using Lyney in a team like this. Of course, if you don't have Kazuha, you can always throw like Zhongli in there, which can be very good for providing a shield. If you do use a shield, then you may not need Dia for the resistance to interruption. If you're using a shield, then you can take Dia out and you can put somebody else in there, but you still want those 3 pyro characters. You can run a weird melt team with like off-field Ganyu. You're not going to get the full attack buff, but you can do it. Just know that you're missing out on part of the passive. And if you're okay with that, then cool, you're okay with that. So that is going to be it for this video. If you have any questions, you should leave it down in the comments. Myself or somebody else, be sure to answer it, and I'll see you in the next one.